Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the Monday show. Yes, I'm Andrew Musgrove and I'm back. I can hear the cheers from Benwell to Wallsend. And as usual, I'm joined by Aaron Stokes. And this week, plenty to talk about despite the international break. We'll talk about Dan Burns' new deal and who might be next. Discuss why Gareth Southgate's refusal to pick anyone fresh in the England squad might be a good thing for Newcastle United, and look back on the Magpies season so far. So hit that follow button, share the episode, and leave us a rating and review. Let's get on with the show. Well, actually, before I do, I just want to say something about last week's episode because I tuned in. Yes, I've been on holiday, but I did tune in. And I'm very grateful to Newcastle Fans TV, Sam Mulner, for stepping in. He's a great guest. He's an even better guest host when he does get the chance to get into this hot seat. But I can't let his near slanderous comments regarding my well-researched trivia go because they were absolutely scandalous. You know, to suggest that I've not been clear or was incorrect in my answers is absolutely cheeky. Alan Smith did play for England while at Newcastle United. He faced Austria in a friendly in November 2007, having signed for Newcastle United earlier that year in the summer. So, Sam, if you're listening, back in your box. But Aaron, I thought you actually did quite well with that trivia.
I did for once. I thought I performed above average. I do agree with Sam. I think it was a little sloppy from you. There wasn't, that clarity that we needed from a good trivia host. And yeah, I think maybe we might have to have a little talk going forward about whether we change it.
100% clear. Caps earned while playing for Newcastle United. And every name on that list had earned a cap while playing for Newcastle United. But thank you for the comments. Someone called me a fraud in it. So whoever that was, thank you very much. You had a good week though?
Yeah, all right week. I tell you what, I'm sick of the international break. I've just lost all interest in international breaks. I mean, I don't know what you feel, but
well, I'm glad you've come to my party because I've been like this for years.
I just think it's just having one of them is bad enough. Having one in September, October, and November is even worse. So yeah,
there's another one to come as well.
Exactly. I know.
I despise international breaks. I don't like international football. We're going to talk about that later in the show. I mean, it might be the reason you don't like the international break this time around is because you're actually not on holiday. Usually you're offsetting yourself somewhere.
I do usually take this as an opportunity to, get some well-earned rest and, much needed relaxation time. But yeah, I've been powering through, working through it, dealing with the severe lack of news that we've had out of Newcastle United in recent days.
Well, we've found quite a bit to talk about. But I've been down south. I went to the Sea Life Centre, spent the little one's inheritance getting tickets into the said centre. But you saw tortoises or turtles and you saw stingrays and sharks. Not sure what Harriet can actually see at this point in her young life, but she was memorized by it all, as was I. So the best ticket I think I've bought in recent weeks. Well, the PSG game aside. Let's start then with Dan Burns' new deal. The big defender's deal ran until June 2024, having signed a 2.5-year deal in January 2022 upon his arrival from Brighton. 70 appearances later, 48 as a left back. I'm not sure many people would have imagined that to be the stat, but that's true. That is the number. He signed a new deal, taking him until June 2025. I mean, first off, Aaron, it's just a reward for his hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really pleasing to see that they've got that done, and he's obviously signed with improved terms. Another year on Tyneside. As you say, I think when we talk about who deserves a new deal, Dan Burns been up there for a long while. So yeah, very good to see that they're tying these players down. And there was one part of Burns' sort of interview after when he got the contract, and I just want to read it out because I thought it was really, really poignant, and I really enjoyed it. And he said,
"I've got them here. Would you like to borrow my notes?"
Yes, I would. I said when I signed that I didn't just want to be a stopgap signing to keep us up. I wanted to be here for a long time. And how many people would have thought when Dan Burns signed in January 22, very good signing, keeping them in the league, and then they'll go out in the summer and they'll strengthen at centre back or at left back, and they haven't done that because of how well he's played.
Well, I agree, and I think it's fair to say they wanted Botman in that January. They didn't get him, and they went after Dan Burn. It was a name that I'd be honest, I've said it before, I had no idea who Dan Burn was, and now I've fallen in love with the story of him getting released when he was a young lad and coming back and proving everyone, including myself, wrong. And I think you make an excellent point, because not only did people, or what we think, a group of people probably thought he'd be on his way by now, or he certainly wouldn't be in the first team. no one expected him to be Newcastle United's first choice left back at this stage in his Newcastle United career. And I think the fact that they brought in Lewis Hall, a teenager, and didn't go out and sign an established left back like your best mate over in Milan, Hernandez, that shows you just what Eddie Howe and the transfer team and the club think about Dan Burn. And then they've given him an extended deal as well.
Well, that's the thing. Even if you rewind just as close as the start of the summer, and you'd ask fans, right, where do they need to strengthen? A lot of people were still saying then, even after Burn's storming season last season, they're still saying we need an upgrade at left back. Eddie Howe, as you say, clearly didn't think that was the case. Lewis Hall comes in to be the understudy, and I think he just continues to prove the doubters wrong. There's still people that don't believe in him. I mean, even you and John Gibson were having a debate over him a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, and after that, he goes and pulls out one of his best ever performances against PSG. Every turn, every time he gets doubted, he just continues to prove everyone wrong. And as you say, the story is what makes it so good. Pushing trolleys and Asda 10, 15 years ago, struggling to make it at these lower league clubs before finally getting a shot at his boyhood club at the age of 29. I mean, there's still hope for you, maybe.
I don't think so with my knees. But yeah, it is. It's such a great story, and you're right. I think the debate about him and the constant is he right for Newcastle United? Do they need a new left back? What is the future in that position? I think that just adds fuel to the fire for him, and that'll just add as a motivation. And I think that you've just read out the quote there. He didn't just want to be a stopgap. And I think that means he's well aware. He's well aware of the debates that goes on podcasts and on YouTube and in the pubs and the clubs about Dan Burn, Newcastle United left back. But as you say, every time he has a below average game by his standards that he's set, the next game, he just seems to find something in him which goes, okay, that was a little bit of a blip. He is Newcastle's left back. And I'm all for it. And do you know what the other thing is? It's just a really proud moment for him. Ladies and gents listening and watching, let yourselves get a bit emotional because, as you say, he's been on the journey. He's a boyhood Newcastle United fan, released from the club at the age of 12. He's just living out your dream, our dream, most wanting to be footballers. He's doing it, and he's doing it so damn well as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, is he still a little bit underrated? Does he still, get more stick? A little bit like Miggy, they're the players that they always are seen as the scapegoats because they're maybe not the flashy name. But as I say, one of the most impressive things for me about him is the fact that he just continues to prove everyone wrong whenever he's doubted.
Yeah, I do think teams try and target Dan Burn, but very few teams have actually got the better of him, and especially the pacey wingers who you expect on paper to be beating him, every time they go up against him. But he just seems to find an extra extension in his legs, extra pace. He's a very, very good defender, reads the game really well, and he gives his all. He's also been helped, I think, by the fact he's got Anthony Gordon playing in front of him who tracks back, puts in the effort, and them two have got a real partnership, and also the rest of the defense as well. I think that is a really good thing about what we've seen over the last year. They work as a unit, so they cover each other. And I think the way they do play it maybe is a bit of an admittance that, okay, maybe he hasn't got the pace that you need long-term in that position, but we'll cover Dan Burn and we'll cover him because he's an important cog to that back four, to the team. And yeah, I think when teams do try and get the better of him, when they do underestimate him, they're found out very quickly.
That Gordon point is a crucial one because how many times last season were we talking about Maxi and how it didn't work with him and Burn because they were too, left short? How well did it work when you had Joe Linton or Joe Willock down that left-hand side able to cover him? And I think I brought this up a couple of weeks ago on the podcast when we were talking about Dan Burn. And I had a couple of texts from friends, that I used to work with in London. They were talking about, Champions League football returning to St James's, and they were talking about, I can't wait to see, Dan Burn against Mbappe. And it was sort of like this joke thing of, oh my God, Dan Burn's going to get absolutely rinsed by Mbappe. And I know he was obviously on the opposite flank, but the performance that Dan Burn put in against PSG, I mean, it was helped by Ousmane Dembele being, pretty poor. I would have fancied Dan Burn in that form to get the better of Mbappe that night. So, yeah, it just goes to prove, how far he's came. And I think, even he probably wouldn't have imagined this would be the case 18 months down the line after signing.
Yeah, like I say, a tremendous story. And he says it means everything to me to play for this club and to sign a new contract. Feels even more of an achievement signing this one than it was actually signed here in the first place, because I think that represents how far Newcastle United have come. Now, I've done a video for our YouTube channel where I've asked the question: would you rather Newcastle United finish in the top 4 this season but sacrifice a cup, or would you rather them win a cup and sacrifice the top 4? And to be in that discussion and actually, my opinion, top 4 is the most. That's a mark of how far they've come. And like Dan Burn says there, him signing a new contract at this stage when they are playing in the Champions League, when they're going to be going for the top 4 again, and people thought he was coming in just to make the numbers up.
Yeah, and I think what was quite telling the other day was the reaction to the contract news. Every single person was, delighted for Burn, thought it was well deserved, had no qualms about it. And as I say, if you just rewind to the start of the summer, there was people saying, okay, well, this is the position we need to strengthen. Burn, yes, he's been a good servant, but it's time for him to maybe drop to a squad player. And now, after what has been a very, very good start of the season for him, I think, that public perception is starting to turn, I think.
I just would love to be a fly on the wall, not just on the wall, actually inside his mind, what he's thinking. I mean, scoring against PSG, and then you get a new deal, which is going to take the next couple of years. I mean, what must be going through his mind?
I mean, very, very right. But I think also you can say that about Longstaff. You can say that about Anderson. You can say that about Paul Dummett, I bet, after the Manchester City game. I would have loved to know what his reaction was, to all that praise after so long on the sideline. So it's just part of a collective, Burn is one of the main men now, but there's so many players behind the scenes, Lascelles, these players that are just, benefiting from working with Eddie Howe.
Sammy Carrick says, I've literally never seen Dan Burn have a bad game. An absolute rock. And Spawn, Alan says, was just about to say it is time. I can't read that comment. Top 4 and a cup will come under these owners. I'm not sure. Sorry, what he's saying there about Dan Burn. But anyway, there's lots of comments praising Dan Burn and the new contract. Eddie Howe said in the quotes announcing the new deal, Dan is a leader on and off the pitch, so we're delighted he has extended his stay with us. He's a key part of our squad and has played a huge role in our progress since his arrival. Talk to me about these leaders and first off, the role that Dan Burn plays in that leadership group.
But Dan Burn, I think it might sound stupid, but one of the most telling moments about what Dan Burn brings to this team is that daft dance he did on Sky Sports. Do you know what I mean? That type of dressing room camaraderie, him and Longstaff, the relationship they've got is absolutely fantastic. And it's crucial to what Eddie Howe wants to build this team. His mantra is you need to be a good guy as well as a good person, and Dan Burn certainly is that. Very, very interesting. I mean, for those who pick up a match day program every time they go to St James's, it used to just be a message from Eddie Howe and a message from the captain at the start of the program. Now it's a message from the leadership group, and each of the players take it in turns to sort of give a message to the fans before a game. And I think you look around that dressing room now, and you haven't just got Trippier and Lascelles, you've got a lot of players now who are stepping into that mould. Callum Wilson fits that bill. Dan Burn, Fabian Schär, even Sean Longstaff, despite the fact he's only 25, has got a real huge role in this dressing room now.
I think what's really good about it is that the leadership group is split. You've got experience, the likes of Kieran Trippier, the likes of Callum Wilson, and then you've got Dan Burn, who is, as you say, 29, so he's got that experience.
31.
He's 31 now.
29 when he signed.
Looks 29. 31, so he is my age. There's still hope for me. But obviously he's got that experience, and I was thinking when you said it there, and I heard it the first time around, he was looking really young.
Signed, he was 29, is what I was trying to say. Sorry.
Apologies there, Dan. But yeah, he's got that Premier League experience, but he also knows what this club means to the city, to the fans, to you guys listening and watching. And I think that's really important to get that message out, because when you have this perceived open checkbook and you go out and sign the stars like Bruno, like Sandro Tonali, like Alexander Isak, players who are going to come in, they're going to want to win things, big players who could have gone to big clubs. You still need that undercurrent of local lads who know exactly what it means to put on that black and white shirt. And when things are going bad, which they will again, we have to say it, there will be bumps in the road. They will pull, the rest of the team up and say, look, this is not good enough. This is not good enough. And when things are going well, i.e. the Champions League game against PSG, they will celebrate it like they've won a cup. They've just scored, but they will be able to tell the story. I mean, imagine being in the dressing room before that Champions League anthem played, and you've got Sean Longstaff, Jacob Murphy, Dan Burn, these players who can just deliver the message, talk about the 3-2 against Barcelona, talk about their dads telling them or their granddads telling them about Bob Moncur lifting the cup in '69. It's really important to have that undercurrent of Geordies who can just really relay the message home.
Yeah, and you know what it is? I think it goes even further back to them appointing Eddie Howe, because I think if you'd gone for a big European exotic name to replace Steve Bruce, I'm not so sure I would have seen the likes of Dan Burn and Matt Targett signed in January. Can you really imagine Antonio Conte saying, "Okay, I want to go out and sign Dan Burn"? I don't think he would have. I don't think managers like Poch or whoever else was mentioned, or Emery maybe, I don't think there would have been that focus on getting local lads in the dressing room. Eddie Howe gets that. It's what he wants. So yeah, just really,
It's
really
working.
positive. It is working.
It's paying off,
charm.
isn't it? I suppose the next question is who might be next. So they've signed up Callum Wilson, they've signed up Bruno and Dan Burn as well. You've though got Fabian Schär, Jamal Lascelles, Matt Ritchie, Emil Kraft, Paul Dummett, and Javier Manquillo out of contract in the summer to come. Now, I think you can pretty much say goodbye to Manquillo and Matt Ritchie, although I would offer Matt Ritchie some sort of coaching deal. I think that would be a really big benefit to Newcastle United. But in terms of playing contract, I think you can pretty much send them out the door. Surely, though, a year's deal at least has to come for Fabian Schär and Jamal Lascelles, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would definitely imagine so. I mean, Fabian Schär has came out this week and said that he obviously wants to stay put. Very, very promising, especially given where he was just a couple of years ago. Jamal Lascelles, I think it's going to be the same stance that Eddie Howe took in the summer. For as long as you want to be here, there's a place for you. It just sort of comes down to whether he wants to play. I think this run on the team's probably swayed him more towards saying, okay, I've still got a role to play here.
And the other way, the fact that he's performing so well has
Yeah.
probably swayed those who are making the decisions that actually he is worth another 18 months.
100%, yeah. So I think those are the two out of the names that you've just mentioned. But yeah.
What about Emil Kraft? I mean, it depends on his fitness. I feel so bad for him because he was doing so well before that injury, and he's just been hit by arguably one of the worst injuries you can really be hit by. I mean, you know all about it, don't you? How are you doing first off?
I'm okay.
You're working back to it. Kraft is also working back to playing for the under 23s, and you will probably see him feature, you would think, in maybe the first round of the FA Cup, perhaps in January. But it really is a big few months for him, because right now you would probably say, unfortunately, he's on his way out, wouldn't you?
Yeah, unless by some sort of minor miracle he manages to get a spell in the first team, but with Livramento coming in, I can't really see that happening. Should anything happen to Trippier, as you say, it's really, really disappointing. One of the sort of forgotten men that really, really improved under Eddie Howe in that first season. I mean, from a player who was all at sea at times under Bruce.
Well, we joke, don't we? We joke about fan clubs on this podcast, but if you had a fan club, not a fan club, but you had a club of players who have improved under Eddie Howe, you'd be running out of space. And he was on the verge of getting his own little card and joining the likes of Joe Linton and Longstaff.
100%, he generally was. I don't think that's even an over exaggeration. His improvement was absolutely fantastic in that first season. So look, very, very positive to see that he's been back with the under-21s. Hopefully he does manage to find himself in some senior match day squads before the new year. But I think the jury's out on that one.
I'd have to go out though and sign in a third right back, you would think, wouldn't they?
Unless Ashby comes back.
Oh, of course, must out down at Swansea. And he's not doing too badly, is he? So maybe one to watch out there. But yeah, you would say Schär and Lascelles definitely to extend their stays, and then Kraft maybe up in the air. I mean, Paul Dummett.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Dummett, because obviously he did so well against Manchester City, and then we haven't really seen him. I don't know. I think the jury's still out on that one as well.
I wonder though, again, is he going to want to leave Tyneside? So even if they say, look, we're not going to offer you a playing contract, is there something they can do again? Maybe takes his coaching badges and they keep him in and around the club, because again, he's one of those who can just relay the story to whatever superstar they sign next about how important pulling the black and white shirt on is to the fans who pay their money to come and watch them. You do then look ahead, though, to the summer of 2025. So obviously Dan Burn's contract has been extended until then. You've got Wilson, you've got Trippier, Longstaff, and Joe Linton. Their deals all run out in the summer of 2025. So some big decisions to be made then. You might think, whoa, why we're talking about a couple of years down the line. But that's going to come around sooner than you think, because obviously you get to next summer, 2024, then they've only got 12 months to run on the contract. Then you get a January and you could think, someone going to get them on the cheap. So let's go through the names. Dan Burn, what do you do in the summer of 2025? I know it's a little bit.
I know,
but I think especially the decisions on Longstaff and Joe Linton. Trippier maybe a little bit in limbo because what's he going to be then? 35.
Yeah, I mean, 34, 35. Dan Burn's going to be 33. It's a long way off. I think of the names you've mentioned, Sean Longstaff, talks ongoing for a new deal for him, which is very, very positive, well deserved. Joelinton as well, looking to get him tied down. There's hearing that he might be getting the same wages as Bruno, which would automatically take him to, top or second top spot. But yeah, getting those two tied down is key, Longstaff and Jordan, because all of a sudden, I mean, there's nothing to suggest that either of them are going to leave, or they wouldn't let them run down on a free anyway. But those are the two that you really need to keep tied up.
And not to labour the point, but isn't it a little bit crackers that we're talking about Newcastle United under the richest owners in club football, and we're talking about them in the summer of 2025 with Sean Longstaff and Joelinton getting new deals. You would imagine maybe a 3-year deal, a 4-year deal, taking them to maybe even 2030. And they're playing major parts in a Newcastle United squad and team that you would hopefully be expecting to challenge for the Premier League title, back in the Champions League and going all great guns in domestic cups. Sean Longstaff and Joelinton playing a major part in that. It still blows my mind slightly.
No, absolutely. No, I was reminded the other day, and it was something I'd completely forgot about. Everton trying to sign Sean Longstaff for £1 million not too long ago. And now, I mean, what price would he be now if you were to sell him?
More expensive than Scott McTominay, probably.
Yeah,
right?
Probably, yeah.
That's going to haunt you. That's going to haunt you. I mean, yeah.
Look, he's been flying for Scotland.
Yes. The same for Joelinton as well. I mean, you'd be looking at Joelinton, you could probably see 100 million, I think, quite easily. And Sean Longstaff, the thing is, you pay the England premium as well.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to think about that. But then you got to think, well, who's going to come and buy him? Who's going to persuade him to leave Newcastle United when they're on this journey and he's playing such a big role in it?
Well, that's the thing. Nobody, you would think.
Because he's the reason that Bruno Guimaraes is playing so well at the moment. Like, he's the main, he's the key to Bruno, I think.
He's one of the main reasons, and I'll probably stop short of saying he is the main reason, but he's one of the main reasons Newcastle United are back in form. I mean, it is actually mental to think how better off Newcastle United are with him starting than we're not. They just look a completely different team. And when you've got a midfield that's packed with so much talent, it's just refreshing, as you would say, to see the academy man, shining above them all. So I think, fantastic to see that Sean Longstaff's going to get a new deal, and they're hoping to get that concluded. I think it's just a really, really positive step.
What do you think it does for players like Dan Burn, who knew, his deal was coming to an end, and then they say, well, here's a new deal, we'll give you a year's extension, same to Callum Wilson and to Bruno. I know it's a different sort of contract, it's a pay rise to fight off other teams, but what do you think it does for a player in terms of just focusing their attention and they're not distracted about their future anymore? I mean, is it a distraction when you are talking about contracts and you're not sure where you're going to be in 2 years' time, do you think?
I think maybe if you're getting towards the last year of your deal, you don't know whether you're in or out the team. You don't know whether your future's going to hold. I mean, for players like Dummett, as you say, who, this is all they've known their entire life. Do you know what I mean? He's never wanted to leave Newcastle. I speak to people that are close to him often, and they say, he's up here and he's had offers to go elsewhere. It was similar with Alana or Jamie Sterry, who had similar. He could have went and played anywhere else, but he wanted to stay in the northeast. So it must be a little bit distracting for those local players, and as you say, for the likes of Byrne and Wilson, when their future is up in the air, and that they don't know whether in 2 years' time they're going to have to relocate their family and stuff like that.
Well, I think we're going to see a new deal for Alexander Isak at some point as well. I know he's got a deal until 2028, but I think the fact that Bruno signed a new contract and seen a pay rise, I think Isak might also follow. First off, I'll get your thoughts on that, and then if you follow up with the answer to this question, well, what do you think it does in the camp when they see players like Bruno get a big deal? Do you think other players are then looking around and think, well, I need to be on the same level? Or is Newcastle a little bit different? Because I know it sounds daft, but I just look at Newcastle and you watch the videos the club put out and you just watch the way they are together. And there's some kind of unity there, which just makes me think they're a little bit different. They're a little bit different to every other big club.
It was something that we spoke about loads in the summer and the previous summer. You remember when there was all that talk of players, Jesse Lingard coming in, Howe was saying no because he wanted that dressing room to be, they're all on the same level. The money thing, look, how much is it going to bother them that Bruno is now, one of the top earners? Sandro Tonali's came in on big money. I think we will see, as you say, the likes of Isaac, Gordon potentially getting much improved deals. I mean, it's what they deserve, though. Anthony Gordon coming in and signing for 40. Yes, he came in for £40 million, but he was in and out the team. He wasn't a regular starter. He was a bit of a squad player. If he can have a full season in the first team, he should be knocking on the door and saying, well, I want a pay rise. Not saying he should be on the same as Bruno, but they're going to want improved terms. They're going to want security. They're going to want, rewards for what they've offered this team. But I look at that group and I think the same as you. I think it's just a group of good mentalities. They've got good relationships with each other. I don't think you've got anyone in that camp who's going to kick up a fuss because of, something as small as wages.
I think they accept hard work pays off. Like Bruno has got that deal because he's worked hard and he has been arguably
The main man.
the best player the best player in black and white of a generation. I think some would argue. Isaac, a new deal in the next couple of years, maybe?
Yeah, I 100% could see that with improved terms.
I also guess the fact that Bruno has signed a new deal and he's committed his future to Newcastle. Now, yes, there may be a release clause in there as well, but that's only a good thing to the other players who are not too far away from his level. So when you look at someone like Anthony Gordon or like Sandro Tonali or like even Kieran Trippier to an extent, you go, the club are serious in what they're trying to do. They're signing the best players down to extended deals, and that gives you hope as a player. I think as a future rival as well. Let's not hide away from the fact they'll have irons in the fire for January ready, and you're looking at it and you're thinking, well, wow, okay, they've signed Bruno down for another couple of years, brilliant stuff. They're serious. They're not just here to make up the numbers. It gives you hope that there's a long-term plan.
It does, and what it also offers is security. Now, I always go back to Arsenal and the last couple of years of Wenger and how many players they'd let their contracts run down, even though there were key players. Aubameyang had his contract run down. Alexis Sanchez left for nothing. Mesut Ozil left for nothing. Newcastle United do not want to end up in that position, and they're not going to end up in that position by making sure they're tying their best players down now. Talking about Isaac and stuff getting a new deal, I think we will see that, and I think we'll see more of these release clauses being put in. People will look at them and think they're negative, but actually they're a real positive for Newcastle. They offer them a lot of security. If for whatever reason things went south between Bruno and the club further down the line, a club aren't going to come in and lowball Newcastle and manage to pull them away on the cheap. It's a very, very smart thing to do.
It is, and then if you spend the money wisely, you look at West Ham and the players they brought in for the Declan Rice money. It's just a case of progression, isn't it? And every team has to do it. You look back to Kevin Keegan, Nani Cole, and whatever. Every team has to do it at some point. Man City, you've gone through something a little bit similar with the old god, so to speak, leaving. It has to happen. And as long as you protect your assets and you get the right deal for your star players, if someone comes knocking, then there can be positives out of it. Plenty of people in the comments. Hello to Samuel watching from Liberia. Nice to see you in the chat. Alan adds will have Hall as well, likely until 2025. Newcastle make the deal permanent, which they're very much likely to do. Ian says we were laughing at Longstaff for 40 million. He's referring to Manchester United back in the day offering crazy money for a young Longstaff. He makes a point that it's quite the turnaround. And he says, when Trips is done, what about him joining Eddie's team for coaching? Bet he fits in there. I mean, the amount of the amount of current players we're getting when they retire to be coaches at Newcastle United, we're going to have to borrow Chelsea's architect to extend the dressing room, I think. But joking aside, that really does reaffirm and emphasize the leaders they've got in the dressing room, which you want to keep around and pass that wealth of experience and leadership on to the younger players coming through the ranks.
100%. And Matt Ritchie, I know we've already sort of briefly spoken about him, but he's the key man that we always bring up when we're talking about potentially they were moving into the coaching thing. He's doing his coaching badge with the club. He's coaching academy sessions. He's really trying to get his foot in the door at the club so that even though he's not playing, he's still helping out. And I think we'll start to see that with Dummett, potentially even Lascelles further down the line. I could definitely see him sticking around. Kieran Trippier is an absolute no-brainer if that's what he wants to do. You can imagine him though being a good coach and a good manager, and that's someone Newcastle should probably try and keep around.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. Ian also makes the claim that Eddie is a genius. I genuinely think we have the new Alex Ferguson.
Bold shout.
Thoughts?
Yeah, look, Staveley said, didn't she? She thought they had their Newcastle's equivalent of Fergie at Man U when the sound how, and we all sort of laughed, but maybe we're not laughing so much now.
Geordie Toon for life says player salaries should be rewarded on the pitch, not because someone else has earned by signing a new contract. I don't think they'll find anyone disagreeing with you there. Ian also makes a point: release clauses are just part of the game. And someone makes a point of Lingard listened, he might be a better player. No doubt about that. Now we're going to spend a few moments talking about England and Gareth Southgate. We briefly mentioned it at the start of the show, and I've written a piece that'll go up online later this week. Basically, just, I mean, look, it's no secret. I despise the international break. I don't like international football. I love watching the tournaments, but I'm not a really big fan of watching England. I just like watching football, but not during the international break. I don't like qualifiers. I don't like friendlies. I sound like that nanny on Mrs. Doubtfire who says, I don't do tea, I don't do maths. I just don't like international breaks. And I'll be honest, I don't see England under Gareth Southgate winning a major honour. I don't think his teams are refreshing. I don't think his teams are good to watch. I don't think they're tested against the very best. So when they come up against the very best in a competitive arena, they can beat them. I think they're boring. And I think a large part of it is down to the fact that he will not pick players in form. Now, this is a Newcastle United podcast, and people will say, you're talking about Longstaff, you've got your blinkers on. Hey, Longstaff deserves a call up to this England squad. Does Dan Burn? I can't see where he really fits in. He's been brilliant, but does he fit into the England squad with everyone else they've got? Probably not. Nick Pope, does he deserve to be back in? You could argue yes, but Sean Longstaff 100% deserves to be back in that England squad. But he's just not been picked. And I think it just reaffirms the fact that Southgate's doing it all wrong for me. And the supporters of other teams will be able to give examples of where informed players who should be in the England squad are not. Am I being harsh on Southgate in England here?
No, I think you've got some valid points on the players he picks. I know that he's got this real sort of affinity for picking Calvin Phillips and Harry Maguire, and there's a couple of players that you think, you can't be picking these players on form. I mean, I'm really, really surprised to see Nick Pope left out the last two. I can't for the life of me work out why that is. Anthony Gordon is the real head scratcher for me, more so than Longstaff, especially given what he did in the summer and the form he started the season. And I thought it was an absolute knock-in bet when Saka picked up his injury and Eze picked up a little knock that Gordon would be in the team. And yet you see him picking Saka. Maybe as a little bit of a double bluff. There's been talk that Arsenal wanted him to do it so that, clubs would think he wasn't injured. I can't see why Gordon's not in that squad. And Pope is the second man. Longstaff I can take or leave. Yes, he's been absolutely instrumental to this team. But I think the other two have got bigger claims to be in the England squad.
Anthony Gordon, I admit, when I was on my rant, I totally forgot about him. He should be also in the England squad, especially with the injuries that you've mentioned. I just look at, though, the midfield, and I think, how is Jordan Henderson not only in that squad, but captain in England? Like, you've sorted out, you've gone to Saudi Arabia. That league may become one of the best leagues in the world in time, but right now it is not. I saw a clip of the day, and it remarked that Henderson played in front of a crowd of less than 1,000.
Yeah, 960, wasn't it?
He's a very good player. But how good can he be in a league which is just developing? It's just starting to emerge. He's not going to get any better. And I just think if he's gone there, you've got to be looking at players who are in the Premier League playing at the very highest level and are in form and doing it week in, week out. And Sean Longstaff is one of several names who should have been in that England squad ahead of Jordan Henderson. And Harry Maguire is another one. I just don't get me. How is Calvin Phillips in it?
On Henderson, me personally, I think there's a reason Henderson left Liverpool. I think it's because he just wasn't good enough to be there anymore. He'd already been phased out as they were doing that midfield rebuild. I just think he's past it now, Jordan Henderson.
He could still do a job, though, couldn't he? In the Palace side or a lower league.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, yeah, look, I'm not defending his move to Saudi. I think every time he opens his mouth and talks about it, he makes it worse, and he continues to dig that hole. Just to open up and say you left because you were getting eye-watering sums of money. We can talk all day about the stance on the LGBTQ and what he's done for them and all that, but he's not a player in form, and he's not playing in the best league in the world. Calvin Phillips is a very, very good player on his day, but he's not playing for Manchester City. He had an absolute stinker against Newcastle United, let's be honest. He doesn't probably have a future at Manchester City. he shouldn't be in that team on form. Harry Maguire cannot get into that Manchester United team, and when he does, he's at fault for a lot. So I can see why Southgate does it, because he's loyal to these players and what they've given him, but it's not, you need to be ruthless. We talk about Eddie Howe need to be ruthless. Gareth Southgate, you've only got such a limited window to actually win something with England. You've got arguably the golden generation here. People will hark back to the noughties when they had Beckham and Scholes and Gerrard and Lampard, and they couldn't win anything. You look at the players that they've got now, they could generally win something. On your point about them not winning anything, look, I think this tournament will probably be Southgate's last anyway next year. Yes, they've done very well in previous tournaments, but when push comes to shove and they face the big teams, they face France and Germany and the Italies, they can never get it done. Their record of beating teams in the last two tournaments is woeful. Sweden, Colombia, anytime they come up against a good team, they lose. On the Newcastle United matter, though, for me, I think Gordon should be in. I can't understand how Nick Pope isn't in that 3 again, unless he's asked to not play, which I can't see. Longstaff, I can take or leave. I'd love to see him in there, but I don't think he's a knock and bet. And I can't see Dan Burn getting in there. But for me, Gordon should be really, really disappointed to not be in.
We've had it before, haven't we? Joe Willock was on a blinding bit of form when there was talk about him getting into the squad. I just think it's so detrimental when you're picking players who are your favourites. It doesn't work.
And also, Gareth Southgate came out last season and got all these stats up and said England don't have enough players playing in the Champions League. He then goes and watches Newcastle United beat PSG 4-1, and 24 hours later, he announces that it's only Trippier in the squad. So
you cannot have watched that PSG game and not have been impressed by Sean Longstaff.
Yeah, but I mean, look, in Southgate's defence, I will play devil's advocate and say maybe the squad had already picked itself by then, and 24 hours before the announcement. But still, you've seen enough of Anthony Gordon this season. You've seen enough of him in the summer, getting player of the tournament for England under 21.
Well, this is the strange one about Gordon, because usually when people talk about Southgate and his England choices, they talk about how a lot of these players have been through the ranks, so they know how the setup is. They've been at St George's Park and they've mingled with the first team pros.
Yeah.
It's a transition, it's just a natural transition to the first team squad. But Anthony Gordon is arguably the best player or informed player he was in the summer in that under 21s. So where's the transition? Why hasn't he been afforded that transition? Is he biding his time? Is he waiting? He hasn't waited for other players of a similar age. I don't get it. I just don't understand it.
I don't understand the Gordon one. I think largely because of what he did in the summer with England, largely because of how he's came back and been a real key man in this Newcastle team. He's found goals. He's just improving every week, and I just can't for the life of me understand why, as Ian says here in the comments, he's the obvious choice.
Yes. I mean, he's also Gareth Southgate's talked a lot about Elliot Anderson. And if I'm Elliot Anderson, I'm walking into the dressing room, maybe just having a bit of banter with Sean Longstaff, and he's mentioned me more times than I've mentioned you.
Very true. Yeah, he has.
It blows my and to be quite brutally honest and frank, Sean Longstaff can continue at the fantastic level he's playing at all the way through this season, and I don't think he's going to get a call up. I don't think Sean Longstaff will ever get an England call up, and I feel really sorry for him.
Yeah, I don't think I would argue with that. I think it's wrong. I think if he continues in this vein of form, he should definitely be in the conversation. It's a very, very crowded field, but if Jordan Henderson's getting in, you'd have to make the argument that Longstaff could.
Sammy says here, I just think it's a myth. We've got some world-beaten players in the squad. Bowen, Gallagher, Henderson, Watkins, so far from world beaters. The only world-class players are Jude, Kane, and Trippier. Now, I think it's interesting because world-class, okay, no, but you got some Bowen's a fantastic player. You walk into this Newcastle United squad.
I love Watkins as well.
I think Watkins, is a very good striker. No wonder Aston Villa tied him down. Gallagher, I just don't get. I don't get the links to Newcastle consistently. I don't get how he just seems to always get in that England squad. And as we've spoken about, Henderson's, on the road to being past it, he's not already down it. It is bizarre, and I do feel sorry for Longstaff, Willock, Dan Burn. They're not going to get their chance.
But let's flip it.
Mm-hmm. Is it a good thing?
It is. In a sense, it's a good thing. I don't want them playing meaningless friendlies or whatever against Australia. I want them on Tyneside with their feet up, getting some rest and relaxation in there, ready for Crystal Palace on Saturday with no jetting around the world. That, in a sense, is a positive. When you look at the Newcastle injuries that have been building up and the run of games and this packed schedule, maybe there's a bit of you thinking, okay, maybe there's a bit of Eddie Howe thinking, okay, I'm glad that it's only Trippier out there with England.
Well, actually, it's interesting to say that. So he's his oldest player. I mean, he must have some engine on him.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, yeah, I think if you're Longstaff, you're looking at it and maybe thinking, look, I'd love to play for my country. I think I'm good enough to be in that squad, but I've got Palace coming up, and then I've got Dortmund coming up. I've got a Carabao Cup, a last 16 match coming up. There's a busy few weeks coming up before the next. Oh my God, the next international break. How is there another one coming up? It's not too far away, and there's a question or two based around the next international break later in the show. But yeah, I think you take the positives, like you said, they're not at risk of injury, and the squad was looking tired against West Ham. They'd worked their backside off against PSG. They were looking to need a rest. So yes, hopefully they've got their feet up and they are. Go on.
And just before we move on from this topic, one thing that I found really, really interesting in the international break so far, one of the few things I found interesting during this break from football, John Carver coming out and saying that Scotland are not only trying to get Elliot Anderson to play for them, they also want Harvey Barnes and Tino Livramento. That'll be very, very interesting. Now that Scotland are qualifying for tournaments, back-to-back tournaments, it might not be the worst thing in the world if they say, okay, you know what, we're not going to get into Gareth Southgate's team. Let's go and play for Scotland in a really, really improving country.
You do think that, though, at least Elliot Anderson, not so much Harvey Barnes, but Elliot Anderson's a little bit in limbo, because if, as expected, Gareth Southgate goes after the next tournament, then you're waiting to see who comes in. Someone might have a totally different approach where they do pick in a mixture of experience and form. So, what do you do? I always look at Billy Gilmore moving to Brighton under Potter, and then Potter moving to Chelsea like a day later. And I'm thinking maybe that's what some of these players are waiting for in terms of Elliot Anderson before he makes his decision. Or does Elliot Anderson, well, look, even if the manager changes, I still got more opportunity of playing international football with Scotland. They look like they're going to be established contenders, or at least qualifiers in the major European and World Cups in years to come. I'll take my chances then.
Yeah, really interesting to see what Anderson did, because obviously he joined up with Scotland in September. He got the call. Apparently he'd had a lot of conversations with Steve Clarke, who had persuaded him that it was the right decision for him to make. And I said, yeah, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to play for Scotland. I'm going to pledge my allegiance to them. Started training with them for 2 or 3 days, and then all of a sudden said, okay, hang on. I've been a bit too rash. I want to pull out. I don't want to sort of be there. Now, as you say, I mean, Southgate's talked about him, but, we haven't even brought him up there about knocking on the door for England. He's been very, very good, but I wouldn't say he's close to being England level yet. Not in the players you've got playing in that position.
Do you know what, though? It would not surprise me if suddenly Southgate called him up and didn't call up someone like Longstaff or Willock. He's got a history of kind of just making left field choices of the youngsters. But yes, a very interesting dilemma there. The final thing on England and internationals, I saw a tweet the other day which put out the best start 11 for England, and it had Kyle Walker as the right back. Is Kyle Walker in there ahead of Kieran Trippier? If you were picking everyone who's fit and raring to go, first game of the next tournament, is Kyle Walker ahead of Kieran Trippier?
No, but I love Kyle Walker so much that I'd be tempted to maybe put Trippier left back for England. I like him at left back for England, and I love Kyle Walker, but I think Trippier is actually a more well-rounded player than Kyle Walker.
Les says, at least Trippier is well enough to protect his fitness when in the England camp. Too many return less than fit when they've left. And a lot of people saying how lucky Tino Livramento is to be working alongside Kieran Trippier as the best right back in the world, in many people's opinion, and what Tino Livramento can learn from Kieran Trippier going forward. Right then, we're going to finish off looking at the season so far. So Newcastle United currently like 8th in the table on 13 points. 4 wins, 1 draw, and 3 defeats. How are you summing up the season so far?
Solid. I'd say very, very impressive to see how they've turned it around after the first couple of games. I was starting to get a little bit worried after Brighton. The manner of the performance, the defeat, the way they were just completely, playing off the park in some sense. So really, really impressed with how they've done between international breaks. I'd say it's been a good start of the season, especially when you factor in the European results so far. Definitely,
I think to be 8th in the table, I think it's 7 points off the top. given the start and the rocky start they had, like you see that Brighton game, it wasn't flowing. They didn't look as fit as they did at the end of last season. It looked like a bit disjointed. Questions about Tonali and Bruno and XYZ. They've come together, and the most refreshing thing, yes, it's time for that segment. The most refreshing thing is they've worked out, the West Ham game aside, in recent weeks, how to defend again, because that was one of the big worries. They could not keep a clean sheet all the way through kind of 2023, really, and they've suddenly worked out how to do it again. And look, they're going to have days where they concede goals, but for the large part, they look like they're back to their best in keeping the opposition quiet.
And not only are they back to their best defensively, they're doing it without Sven Botman, or they've been doing it without Sven Botman. I mean,
Jamal Lascelles for England.
Well, Southgate did bring him up last week, funnily enough. Another man.
Did I miss that?
Yeah, another man who got a little nod from Southgate, apart from instead of Longstaff. He wasn't talking about calling him up, but he was asked about Newcastle United players, and Southgate said, "Well, I was there last night watching PSG. It's great to see Jamal Lascelles, who we had in the under-21s."
Gareth, call Jamal Lascelles up, and everything is forgiven, right? Everything.
He did name drop Lascelles. He did name drop Dan Burn as well, and just said how good it is that players like that are getting their moment in Europe. But yeah, he still won't call them up. So,
but yes, good to see them. Just being strong again at the back.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And as you say, that Brighton game, going back to it, heading into that last international break, I mean, they were all over the shop with the back. Nick Pope was having a really poor spell by his lofty standards. I think he's improved in recent games. Still a few issues that I'd like to see ironed out a little bit better with his feet. I still have my heart in my mouth every time he comes out of his.
Well, I text you, didn't I, that the West Ham goal. Just what's he doing? Just stop it, because he does it every single game as well, and he's been really lucky. And then West Ham, he gets caught. Just someone needs to just say, look, stop on your line. Just don't come out, because at best you're going to give some people a bit of an angina attack. At worst, you're going to concede a goal like you did against West Ham.
Yeah, he does still put a little bit of feet in you, but I think his shot stopping has been much improved since the sort of run of games where they were.
He's the best shot stopper in the Premier League.
See, I cannot work out how he's been left out the last 2 England squads.
Well, some people are saying here his kicking is one thing. We saw against PSG, he kicked 3 into touch, and then you have, let's be honest, his decision making when the ball is coming towards him is a little bit.
It's hit and miss. He does get it right sometimes, but other times, I mean, you only have to look back at that Liverpool game last season. But for the life of me, I can't work out how he's not getting in the England squad. It makes me feel like something's just
don't go down that road.
Just not right.
Okay, with Nick Pope.
Yeah,
so I thought you were going to try and promote a Newcastle United conspiracy theory there, but about someone being against Newcastle.
Oh no, please.
That's all right. That's okay, because I was going to shoot you down. But yes. Do you think Newcastle United are handling the packed schedule? Because a lot of games have been played. European nights, you got the Carabao Cup. Let's make no bones about it, they will want to beat Manchester United in the next round, and they're more than capable of doing it in the Carabao Cup. You got 2 games back to back, the Champions League coming up in Dortmund. It's a busy schedule. Are they handling it all right?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, given the turnaround from the last international break to now, the amount of games they've had packed into a short schedule, the injuries they've had. I mean, such bad luck with Harvey Barnes, Sven Botman, Joe Willock's still not back, Joe Linton being out. The players that they've had missing and the performances they've put in shouldn't really be happening. So I think they're managing absolutely fine.
You're saying that they're at such a good level right now without players who you would argue
100%
are in that first team.
100%. Yeah, that's what's been key, is the depth. I mean, Lascelles and Dummett coming in, as we've spoken about. Elliot Anderson's coming in and making it that position his own. Gordon continues to fire when Barnes isn't in the team. Longstaff has came back in and is managing to keep Tonali out. They've got players there that should really be their squad rotation players, and they're coming in and performing, which is so. Yeah, they're handling it at the minute. When I look at the fixtures that they've got between now and the next international break, I think, okay, they need a bit of luck with injuries.
Yeah, have you got them written down? You got them? Go on.
So Palace, Dortmund, Wolves, Man U, Arsenal, Dortmund, Bournemouth before the next international break in a month's time. That's another hefty run of games for a squad that at the minute is, they need a little bit of luck in terms of getting some players back.
Because Barnes is out.
Yeah.
He's missing them. Willock just seems to be getting knock after knock back. So, I mean, is he going to be back? I can't see him back. I just don't see him being back. They're not going to rush him. It's one of those injuries.
Yeah.
Joe Linton,
Joe Linton's carrying something clearly. I mean, he was in Barcelona having, his knee looked at, and we all thought, okay, he's going to be weeks on the sideline. Then he comes back and plays against City, storms it. Then he picks up a hamstring injury after coming on for 3 minutes. He's one you've got to watch in the next couple of weeks. Tonali obviously had that thigh issue in Italy. Bruno, we still don't know whether he's, as full fitness as we never really do.
Botman, you would think would be
Botman
back.
looks like he will be back. So Wilson looks like he'll be back as well.
Isak carrying us some sort of knock.
So
So you have to hope that the 2 weeks that they've had off has helped them in terms of fixing the issues when it comes to fitness. But yeah, I think they're handling the schedule really well. I mean, everyone loves to talk about hangovers, European hangovers, but they've kind of proved that wrong. I know they drew 2-2 with West Ham, but they really should have won that game. They were, their own worst enemy in many ways. They're proving people who expect a European hangover wrong. Now, I know there is one more international break to come. Yes. We're big fans of it, ladies and gents. One more international break to come. But who is it a big finish to the year for? Like, you're looking to December the 31st. Who are you wanting to see, really surprise you or really just step it up a level?
Sandro Tonali for one. I think, a good middle of the road start for him, hit and miss, good performances followed by maybe lackluster performances. I think he's still in for the league. I would love to have him a good end to the year. I know there's obviously a few things away from the pitch that are probably going to be on his mind. But he's the one where I would really like to see a good end the finish. I would love to see a bit more game time for Elliot Anderson. I thought he's been very, very good. I've been enjoying him in the middle of the park, more so than out on the left. I don't know why on earth he was playing through the middle for the first half at West Ham. And look, I just want Gordon to keep performing. I would hate for this to be a sort of prolonged flash in the pan from him. I would love to see him finish the year strong, get that England call up next month to get it under his belt. But those are the three that I would probably point to. What about you?
Yeah, Tonali's an interesting one. Obviously, we know what's happening kind of off the pitch, which might prove a distraction. I'm going to go Elliot Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think he's been brilliant. He hasn't looked out of place. But what I want to see him do is just get it up the level. So when everyone is back fit, the likes of Joe Willock, Joe Linton, you've got Tonali, Bruno, Longstaff, we're not having a discussion where we go, is blah, blah going to come in for Elliot Anderson? We're saying, no.
Mm-hmm.
Elliot Anderson is there and he's there to stay.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's capable of doing that. I want to see him add more goals to his game. I mean, the next question I've got for you, Alvin, was what would you really like to see between now and the next international break? And it's Elliot Anderson get a goal. I think it's a big few months for Elliot Anderson just to really reaffirm that he can be a major part of this, of not the squad, but the actual first team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's more than capable of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely like. I mean, you saw the rate he was knocking those goals in at pre-season. Absolutely fantastic. And they've dried up a little bit as the competitive games came in. I would like to say a little bit more of Tino and Lewis Hall, which I think is probably a sentiment that is shared by people watching live or people listening. I think I can understand why Eddie's easing them in. I thought Tino was so good against.
But then where did they fit into them? Because we're talking about Dan Burn being near enough undroppable. We're talking about Kieran Trippier being the world's best right back at the moment. Like, what can you do that sees Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall get their chance? Are you going to play them in the Carabao Cup against Manchester United? Are you going to play them maybe in the last Champions League game?
Look at that schedule between now and the next international break. You've got Palace on the 21st. Dortmund 4 days later on the 25th, Wolves 3 days later on the 28th, Man United on the 1st, Arsenal on the 4th, Dortmund on the 7th. I mean, a game every 3 days, and you're asking 31-year-old Dan Burn and 32-year-old Kieran Trippier.
Didn't he played most of the games last season, didn't he?
And I'm not saying they can't do it, but I'm saying there's definitely scope in those 7 games to give at least. I mean, Livramento against City. Why wouldn't you play him in the Carabao Cup?
Oh, true. He took his opportunity.
And I would like to see a little bit more of Lewis Hall. And the thing with Lewis Hall is he's so versatile. It doesn't have to be him coming in for Burn. Give Anthony Gordon a rest and playing left wing. Put him in central midfield where he played during the academy. There's absolutely opportunities for those two to play between now and the next international break without the balance of the team being too skew with.
Livermenton Hall should play at Manchester United in the Cup, says Geordie Toon for life. Roger says he'd love to see an Anderson brace. Ian says Anderson just needs a goal, and I think he will explode. A chance for maybe Lewis Miley as well to get a shout. It would be interesting. I think Lewis Hall was dealt a really difficult hand
He was.
in the cup
100%
game
he
against
was.
City, and it was no surprise he was taken off when he was, and that changed the dynamic of the game. Whereas Tino Livramento, that's his position, and he absolutely excelled. And you have to hope that hasn't knocked Lewis Hall back, because you just think, you're a Newcastle United fan, you've signed for your club, this is the first start you're getting. Some would regress, some would go into themselves and think, oh man, have I just blown the opportunity there?
I think it was really, really positive. Eddie Howe, straight after the game, was asked about Hall and Miley both being taken off, and his response was really, really positive. Nothing to do with them. We needed more balance. We needed to change the game. It was nothing to do with their individual performances. They're both still going to be top players for this club. And if that's what he's saying to us in the press, you'd imagine he's saying the exact same, if not more, behind the scenes. I don't think there'll be any hangover from that game.
And here is the positivity that we're after. Jonathan says, qualify for the next round of the UEFA Champions League after 4 games, so we can play the kids in the last 2 weeks. Very possible. And Indy says, keep remember, many of the teams we play also have schedules just as congested, so they won't be having too much rest in between the games. Right. The final question of a kind of little mini review of the season so far, Aaron, is with the 4 Premier League games until the next break, through in the Carabao Cup and the 2 Champions League games, where would you like Newcastle United to be? So we'll start with the Premier League. The 8th currently.
Next 4 Prem games: Palace, Wolves, Arsenal, Bournemouth. I mean,
you're looking at
it's quite favourable on paper. I mean, Palace at home.
I think Palace are a dangerous side.
Palace at home, you would think surely.
I don't know,
should get over
but then we think about
against
that the season before.
I mean,
Nick Pope had to pull off a few must.
And that Joe Willock clanger of a VAR decision as well.
I mean, got 57 minutes without talking about
VAR.
VAR.
Should be replayed, really, shouldn't it? Wolves away, a tricky one. I know they're not having the best sort of season, but obviously they showed against City last time out. They can spring a surprise. Arsenal away is really interesting because, I mean, look at that week.
No, it's at home, isn't it?
Sorry, Arsenal at home. That week, Man United away, Arsenal at home, Dortmund away. I mean, that game could sort of get lost in between the 2 cup games. Bournemouth away.
Yeah,
I would fancy Newcastle down there as well. So 6-7 points, I think I'm hoping for.
I mean, yeah. I look. Palace is a difficult place. Wolves.
Well, come on, we'll do the predictions.
Okay,
and look back on them at the next international break.
Oh, you think at that, right? So I think Palace a point.
Okay, you think a draw.
You're going,
and I think they'll beat them.
Okay, Wolves. Away is it?
Yeah.
A win for Newcastle.
Okay. I'll go draw.
I'm going to go draw, right? Man United in the cup. I think they'll get through.
Yeah, so do I. I think they'll go through.
Arsenal is home.
Yeah.
I think it largely depends on the kind of riding the wave of that cup game. If they get through, I think they're going to be buoyed. I'm going to go draw.
Okay.
I think. Let us know in the comments what your predictions are for the next run of games up to the next international break.
Do I look too optimistic? Think they're going to go unbeaten again between now and next? No, you know what? I'm going to. I think they'll lose to Arsenal respectively.
Right.
And Bournemouth.
They'll beat Bournemouth.
Yeah, I agree. So you think they'll get 8 points, and I think they'll get 7 points.
Look at that. Mr. Negative here is the one predicting more points. You didn't see that one coming, did you, guys and girls? And then Dortmund's at home. I think they'll beat Dortmund
at home.
The way is totally different. I know we're talking about that. That's a game to come after, isn't it? I think they'll beat Dortmund at home. So there we go. We'll come back to them in the next international break. We're going to finish off on the trivia then. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we spent a bit of time talking about contracts. In this week's trivia, I want you to name the 10 players currently in Newcastle United with the longest contracts to run. So I'll help you to get to begin with. You have 5 players with deals until 2028.
Okay. In no particular order, I'll go Bruno.
Yep.
Isak.
Yep.
Botman.
He is on the list. 2027.
Yeah,
So we'll
that's
give
all
you
right.
that.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
on.
Pens run out.
Depends. So just to take you behind the curtain, ladies and gents, we were 5 minutes late because we had to find a pen that worked. We've grabbed 4 pens, and I don't think any of them work.
There we go. I've got
That
one
one
now.
working?
So, right.
Right,
So,
so-
Bruno, Isaac, Botman will go. Sandro Tonali.
Yeah.
We will go with Anthony Gordon.
Yeah. So Anthony Gordon's 2026. So you've got 8 between 2028 and 2027, and then you need 2 from 2026 to take up to the magic number 10.
Nick Pope.
So Nick Pope
is
is your
2026.
That's your 2 from your 2026. You can name the other 3 if you like, and you take up to the magic 13 if you're feeling confident.
No, it's okay. I'll just
Okay,
try
so
and get 10.
Got your 6. So you now need your. You got 2 left in 2028, and you got 2 left in 2027. That would take you up to your 10.
Livramento,
2028. The people in the comments are smashing this, absolutely smashing through. Almiron's 2026, so we're not counting that one.
Okay, so
you've got your 2 from 2026. No,
Harvey Barnes.
Have you just? Oh, you've just seen that in the comments. Come on.
Okay, so one more. What's the last one? 27.
27. As it? I didn't think you'd be cheating that. This guy is like a fan favorite. Cheeky, quick.
Cheeky.
Yeah, he's a little cheeky character.
Murphy.
Jacob Murphy.
Wow.
There you go, ladies and gents. So Aaron got 9 out of 10 there because he cheated on the 10th one and he saw Geordie Toon for life's guess of Harvey Barnes. But there you are, the 10 Newcastle United players at the club currently with the longest contracts. There's there's another list, another few in the 2026 category, including Miguel Almiron in there as well, and Elliot Anderson too. This has been Everything is Black and White podcast. Thank you very much as always for tuning in. Wherever you're listening through or watching through, hit follow, subscribe, leave us a rating, review, and share the podcast among your Newcastle United supporting friends and family. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. For myself and Aaron, we'll see you guys very soon.